I'm Kelsey from the Torque team, and today we're going to explore how a workflow operates for just-in-time access requests using JumpCloud and Slack. This type of workflow would be for users who want to control access to sensitive accounts or data, or maintain zero-trust access. In this example, we set the groups that users can request access to, which can then be requested via Slack, meaning the admin or team will get a Slack message for a request for access. To start, let's review the steps in this workflow. For our variables, we need to set two things: the name of the Slack channel we want the request to go to, and which groups we want to make available for just-in-time access. You'll see that I have 5 groups in here. Some exist and some do not, which is one way we can test the workflow. In the next step, we get the user's email via Slack so we can set that to a variable. Then we have a step to let the user know their request was received. Torque then looks in JumpCloud for the user ID, which leads us to the if step here, depending on whether the user is active. If the user is active and our condition is true, that leads us to the rest of the workflow on the right. Torque will pull the list of which groups the user already belongs to, and we then extract those names. Next, we get the list of all the user groups from JumpCloud, which we also extract. Then Torque will compare the two lists. And what it's doing is comparing the list of just-in-time groups we set as a variable earlier against the groups it found in the all groups list. Then comparing that to the group or groups that the user requested. Then we have our next if condition, because we only want to present the groups that they don't already have access to. So if the user already has access to all of the groups, that directs the flow to notify the user that they already have access. And we can also provide the list of everything they have access to. But if they don't have access to one of the groups, then we continue with the workflow, choosing which group they would like access to and how long they would like access to it. You'll see later that I've added a 1-minute timer for this example, but the template in the library is customizable. Next, we extract the group ID from the request message earlier, and we have a step here to let the user know that they have to wait for approval from the Slack channel. If the request is approved, then the user receives a confirmation message with the length of time the access has been granted for. Torque then tells JumpCloud to add the user to the group, and the user receives a second notification that the access has been granted. The workflow then pauses for the set amount of time. After the waiting period, the user is notified that access is being revoked. Then they are removed from the user group, and again, they are notified. The other path here is if the request times out or is not approved. You can create a customized message to let the user know, with additional directions if you'd like. So now that we know how the workflow is set up, let's test it with an example. Over in our JumpCloud account, we have created a user named Christopher Darst. Let's do a quick refresh just to make sure we're up to date. And you can see that he is in 2 existing groups and no applications. To test it from the user's perspective, and so that we can see both sides of the transaction, I've got a separate virtual machine so I can act as Christopher. So in this example, Christopher goes to Slack and uses the command to request access, which we set simply as JIT request. Then he gets a notification that the workflow has started. If you remember from the JumpCloud screen, Christopher has access to all users and my first group. So Torque extracted the ones he isn't in yet: my second group, my third group, and my AWS group. Let's pretend Christopher needs the AWS group. Then he gets a choice in times. I've set it so that 1 minute is an option in this example, but again, you can set those too. Once the request is entered, we can jump over to the security channel and see that we now have a message basically saying, this is the email, this is the group, and this is the duration. And since we know Christopher has a legitimate request, we can just click yes. Then we also get a message that access has been granted for 1 minute. Back in the Torque channel, we can see that Christopher has also been notified that his request was granted. So now we can switch back over to the JumpCloud account. If you recall, Christopher did not have access to any applications, but if we refresh again, he now has production AWS access via single sign-on, so we know that he's been moved into the proper group. So if I go back and look at the user view, which hopefully I catch before it times out, we see that again, Christopher has access to the AWS production account. We can wait here just a bit for the 1-minute timer. And here you can see that Christopher, the user, got a notice that his access is now expired. This confirms that it's been revoked and it pulls the access from JumpCloud. So now if I refresh JumpCloud one last time, we'll see that the production account is removed from his applications. And if I refresh the user screen as well, you'll see that the applications are gone and the AWS group has been removed. So now you have a better understanding of how this just-in-time workflow operates on either side of the exchange.